What if I told you that just 4 months into my YouTube career, I almost had to quit because my retention graphs were looking like this and my audience was becoming more and more bored with every single upload. But then I discovered something that changed everything. 2 books, which took my storytelling from being so boring that people literally clicked off after just seconds to being so interesting that it quite literally saved my career. Through the teachings of my mentors, I went on the same journey that many of your favorite main characters have been on, which allowed me to learn secrets that, while my views were going down, that allowed my revenue to keep going up and up. Sounds impossible, right? Well, let me teach you, starting by asking you a very simple question. What does literally every movie and TV show have in common? Characters. But why do I need to care about characters for a YouTube video? Well, let me explain. You and I, at least I hope, are both human beings, which means our ancestors used storytelling for one of 2 things, either to educate, such as there might be a saber-toothed tiger or a poisonous plant, or to entertain, occasionally both, which is what I'm hoping to do today in this video. And guess what? People open YouTube today for the exact same reasons. We click on videos to connect with people through stories. And those people are portrayed by what? Characters. But before I dive into characters, we need to discuss something that every single video needs, because without it, there's literally no point in pressing record. When creating your YouTube videos, whoever your main character is needs a goal. Otherwise, they have nothing to work towards and nothing for us, the viewer, to support them on. Let's dive into a movie example. In Star Wars Episode 4, after Luke agrees to go to Alderaan with Obi-Wan, the group's goal is to find a starship that can take them there. However, it's on this journey that they discover our first character type, Threshold Guardians. Threshold Guardians are characters that stand between the protagonist, aka our main character, and their goal. Now, while Threshold Guardians aren't exactly always characters, they could be a locked door, for example. They are always between the character and their goal. An example again in Star Wars is, upon arrival into Mos Eisley, Luke and his group encounter a roadblock, stormtroopers who are searching every vehicle for droids and demanding identification. And if the group is unable to get past these guards and enter past this threshold, the droids will be identified, Luke and Ben will be arrested and most likely killed, and the Death Star plans, they'll return to the Empire. Quite serious stakes. And no, not that kind of stake. I mean stakes as in risk. Another important key for storytelling, which is really important to create tension. But what is tension and why is it important? Well, the group's solution to this problem is actually quite simple, because Obi-Wan, who's been playing the role of the mentor for our protagonist, Luke, showcases his true talents with the Force, using a Jedi mind trick which allows our group to get past this Threshold Guardian and continue towards their goal. However, their reward for passing this test is just another test and another test and another test, and then the story ends. You get the idea. New goals are set, fresh stakes are raised, and Threshold Guardians continue to reappear until the story is concluded. Now, you might be thinking, how does this relate to YouTube? I'm not George Lucas. Well, that's up to you. You could work with Frame 117 and we can help you, or you could spend some time pondering how this could apply to your own stories. But to help you get started, I'll give you one. Because a key Threshold Guardian for all of us is our viewers. For example, let's say that you run a cooking channel. Your viewers are actually the most important Threshold Guardian, because every single time someone opens one of your cooking videos, they are gonna have barriers.
That's fucking wrong! Wrong!
For example, when I want to learn a new recipe, oftentimes I don't have the right tools to get it done. I know, for example, I made cookies recently. I didn't have an airing rack, so the bottom of my cookies were super soft while the top was rock hard. So that's a Threshold Guardian. That's a barrier that you as the YouTuber have to help your audience overcome by clearly stating at the start of the video, as an example, that you need an airing rack or a cooling tray or whatever it's called, I forgot.
And if you need a tool for your script writing confidence, we have a downloadable storyteller's cheat sheet that you can use to follow along step by step in this video, but also use alongside any script you might be writing in any niche on YouTube. It is available absolutely for free, downloadable at frame117.com/scriptum, enter your email and get it immediately.
It also might just be that they have the tools, but they lack the confidence. They may be afraid or scared to try this, and it's up to you as the YouTuber to fill them with confidence, which could also be applied in other niches like finance. Maybe you do have all the right answers for your viewers, you can teach them about saving and investing, but they're just afraid to get started. So that's your job as the content creator to fill them with that confidence, to remove that threshold guardian that's preventing them from taking action and help them get started with something simple. Perhaps making a video teaching them how to invest $10 rather than $1,000, for example. Another example of threshold guardians can be haters or doubters. People might doubt that your main character can actually succeed. You often see this in sports where you'll have pundits or analysts who say things like, this team is going to get swept or this player sucks. They are threshold guardians that the main character has to prove wrong in order to get past and get to that next level. Now, let's go back to Star Wars to look at another character type that is within your main character, known simply as the Shadow. Because within Luke Skywalker exists another version of himself, one that we see in episode 5 when he strikes down Darth Vader, and briefly during the final fight scene in episode 6. Now, while in Star Wars, the Shadow is an evil version or the dark side version of Luke, this doesn't have to be the case for you. An example I often give to my clients is, imagine you're interviewing for a job. The Shadow inside of you is the version that's anxious, nervous, and displays the qualities that means you fail to get that job or succeed in the interview. And this is the exact same thing as if I had succumbed to my shadow in that 4th month of doing YouTube when everything was going downhill. If I had fallen to that shadow, I would have literally had to quit. So what did I do instead? Well, in traditional storytelling, generally at this point in the story, the main character either seeks out or receives some form of mentorship. For example, let's relay this back to YouTube. Let's say you're a travel YouTuber and you make videos of you traveling all around the world and you show your audience different destinations that they might want to visit. Now, I know from my own personal experience in Germany, when I hopped off the plane in whatever airport it was, I nearly missed the train to my hotel, and it was the last train. I didn't speak German, I didn't know what I was doing, I was fresh off a long flight. So what did I do? I sought a mentor, or another traveler, I think he was German, visiting back home, and I just asked him, I want to get here, what do I have to do? He told me, you need to get this ticket, you need to get it validated, you need to wait here, boom, I knew where I was going. Same thing if you're a travel YouTuber. You share that pain with your audience, you share the struggle of, I've just landed, or I'm in this random place in the middle of nowhere. Everyone around me doesn't speak my own language, so that's our threshold guardian. So you seek out a local mentor. Now that mentor might not even speak English either, but they can at least show you or guide you to overcome this shadow within you, the shadow being you not getting to your destination, and basically help you overcome that threshold guardian.
Have you guys done the Cave of the Winds tour?
Just finished it, yep.
Do you have any advice? Because me and Haley are about to go.
So I got pooped on today.
The ponchos are for the seagulls, not for the water.
Now, a lot of this is all about mythical storytelling. That's where Joseph Campbell and Christopher Vogler, the people who wrote these two books, got their ideas from, was old epics. But I want to prove to you that this relates to real life without people even trying to follow the hero's journey. For example, one of my favorite NBA players of all time, Kyrie Irving. Now, Kyrie, tragically in Game 1 of the 2015 finals, suffered a knee injury that saw him ruled out, which pretty much meant that his team lost those finals. So Kyrie seeks out a mentor, and that man is none other than Kobe Bryant. A player, while he was still in the NBA at this time, was essentially at the end of his 5-time championship winning career, and Kyrie sought out Kobe so he could learn how to fix all the mistakes he had made in that 2015 playoff run, so that way next time he got to the finals, if he ever got there, he would hopefully succeed.
And Kobe was like, all right, well, I need you to focus on the things that you can do. You know what I mean? Don't worry about the things you can't do.
And then, of course, if you know Kyrie Irving, he faces perhaps the greatest threshold guardian of all time. A 3-1 deficit in the 2016 finals. Something that literally nobody in the history of the league had ever overcome. But let's just zoom out real quick. We have a protagonist, Kyrie Irving. A mentor, Kobe Bryant. A goal, the championship. Stakes, he was 1 game away from losing in back-to-back years. Threshold guardians, his rival, the Golden State Warriors, but also the media, who were all saying the same thing, that they weren't going to do it.
Oh,
according to history, this series is likely over.
And we also have the shadow inside of Kyrie, which is the doubt that this achievement was actually even possible in the first place. But for you, the same way it was for me, was just pressing record on this video. This is like day 4 of me trying to record and getting over the fact of being on camera. I'm so used to running faceless channels where all I do is read a script, read into my mic, problem solved. So this, the shadow inside me, is the version not pressing record, and it's very, very hard to get over. And even right now, I'm struggling to get over it, but here we are. But then for Kyrie, with all the skills he learned from his mentor, and then of course with LeBron James, they went on one of the greatest playoff runs of all time. They scored 82 points combined in Game 5. I think LeBron had 41 and Kyrie had like 29 in Game 6, and they win the championship in Game 7. It was insane. He overcame everything, pushed past all his guardians, and achieved his goal, which was the championship. Now, that's all great, but one of the biggest problems that I know I personally faced when I was learning about this was, how do I keep everything on track? Because as you probably already know at this point, YouTube is all about your packaging, your title, your thumbnail, and the idea behind the video, and how you deliver on that. So that's why I want to revisit Star Wars really quick, specifically episode 4, to talk about the structure of these videos. So Luke Skywalker, our main character, begins his story on Tatooine, working for his aunt and uncle, before some Jawas show up, and his uncle then purchases 2 droids, R2-D2 and C-3PO, which sets the tone for what is known as the ordinary world. Then, when cleaning R2, he discovers what is known as the call to adventure, a recording from who turns out to be his sister, calling out to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Skywalker then visits old Ben, who shares the same last name, only to find out that Ben is also Obi-Wan, and that now Kenobi wants him to join him on this long adventure to Alderaan. However, despite this clear call to adventure, Luke refuses it. Something that's actually quite common in storytelling. But when he returns home, he sees that it's being destroyed by the Empire, therefore he has no reason but to join Obi-Wan. Now, you could argue that the home being destroyed is the true call of adventure, but we could say they're both. But essentially, your stories must start with the ordinary world. You'll sit in the tone of what essentially your character's upbringing would look like, or what their life looked like before their journey. So if you're, for example, making cooking videos, maybe you learned this recipe which changed your life. You need to actually show the audience what your life looked like before. Maybe you're making a video on like 4 simple, high protein, low calorie meals. You would paint the picture of, before I learned these recipes, my life was XYZ. So that's the ordinary world. The call to adventure would be you learning about these recipes, perhaps giving some backstory about them. Then maybe you have the refusal of the call, which is the stress of learning them, and the stress of learning to sort of love repeating meals and making the same thing on a day-to-day basis. And then you have our next section, which is meeting the mentor. Now, in your case as a cooking YouTuber, the mentor might just be the 2 versions of yourself. You have the shadow, the former self, the one that perhaps was overweight, and you have the new self, which is the one that follows all these meal recipes and loses the weight, the person who's on camera now. And the mentor can be the person on camera now, mentoring the shadow, or you might literally have a coach who helps you. Now, it's here where we encounter our next storytelling beat, known simply as crossing the first threshold. For example, in Star Wars, this is when they enter the Death Star, or in Lord of the Rings, this is when Frodo and his group first encounter the Nazgul, or when the Nazgul attack them. Essentially, this is the first time that your main character overcomes some threshold guardians, the first real threshold guardians. Then we move on into what is known as tests, allies, and enemies. Pretty much what it says, the main character is learning about who are his friends, who are his enemies through a series of tests. A very simple example is in Lord of the Rings, when they first meet Strider. They're kind of unsure, like, is this guy an enemy or is he a friend? It's not very obvious, but over the course of the story or this section, they learn that, okay, Strider is in fact not only our friend, but literally the rightful king. So he's my friend. And they also learn that some people within that first town, I've forgotten the name, I'm very sorry, are actually their enemies, and they are reporting to the Nazgul or to, oh my God, what's the main bad guy's name? He's on the screen. I'm sorry. I'm from New Zealand. I should know this. I'm just going to move on. But they're reporting to the evil Sauron. Now we move on to our next 2 sections, the approach to the inmost cave and the ordeal. To make this simple to understand, let's look at the ordeal first. So for Kyrie, it was when he went down 3 games to 1. In Lord of the Rings, it's when they lose Gandalf. And for me personally, the ordeal was that 4th month of doing YouTube full time when everything was going downhill. This is a point in the story where there is no point of return for our heroes. Everything changes. If you're a fitness YouTuber, maybe you suffer an injury on your journey. Maybe you hurt your knee or you sprain your ankle. Let's say, just for an example's sake, you were doing a personal best squat. You put 100 kilos on your barbell, you go down and you hurt your ankle. You are forced to recover for 3 to 4 months. That would be the ordeal. The approach is basically just working your way there. Now, what happens after the ordeal is known as the reward. So again, let's just relate back to the fitness example. You would take your audience on that journey with you of rehabbing. So instead of cutting the story and just moving on like, I got injured, then I was healthy, you bring the audience with you. You show them the rehab process. You show them that you didn't quit your habits, you stayed focused. And although it was really, really difficult and you found like life without the gym or life without fitness to be difficult and hard, you still endured it. That means once we get to the reward, maybe this is you've been back to the gym for a month and you're reapproaching that 100 kilo PB that injured you. You go down, you go back up, you rack it, that's the reward. For me, my reward was when I received my first 50% plus retention YouTube video. And relating back to Kyrie, it's of course when they won Game 7 and he hit that crazy game winner for the championship. The very, very obvious reward for him. Then we approach our next section, which is simply known as the road back. Now, any good storyteller knows that these sections are interchangeable. If you, for example, relating back to our fitness example, you could put the road back after the ordeal. So it would go the ordeal, road back, the reward. It doesn't have to be in this order. You will find a lot of stories do kind of follow this structure, but rules are meant to be broken. So let's look at Kyrie again for an example. The moment he puts down the trophy and begins his off-season training for the next season, that's the start of the road back. Now, Kyrie faces a bunch of problems on this journey back to trying to get to that Larry O'Brien trophy and win his second championship. The first one is, of course, Kevin Durant joins the Golden State Warriors, essentially forming the greatest super team of all time. The following season, Kyrie wants a new challenge, so he joins the Boston Celtics, which unfortunately sees him face a bunch of problems because he has to fill a new role as the mentor to his young team. Then he decides to form a super team with Kevin Durant and James Harden on the Brooklyn Nets, but he also continues to struggle. He faces extreme adversity for his public viewpoints, which is a very key detail I need you to remember because heroes are people. The most boring stories are the ones where the hero is perfect, where the hero doesn't suffer. Again, part of the reason I chose Kyrie as an example is because his story fits so perfectly, and it proves that point that heroes are people. They are going to make mistakes, but that's what makes them heroes. A lot of people end up hating Kyrie for his viewpoints, but that's what happens to heroes. They make decisions, they stand on their beliefs. You can agree with the hero or not agree with the hero. The point is the hero has to face adversity. They have to change on that journey. No one wants to watch a video where your hero is perfect and wins everything. That's boring. For me personally, my road back was the months after my first 50% plus retention video in which I kept failing. I was constantly stuck in the 35 to 40% range, and I had to relearn these skills that I'm teaching you now and learn to reapply them to my videos better in order to get back there. Which brings us to our next section, the resurrection. The key point here is this is one final challenge. Now, I read the Lord of the Rings books first, and I really enjoyed the final section of the final book in which the Fellowship, or the Hobbits, return to Hobbiton, and they have to face Saruman and Wormtongue one more time, in which they've taken over the town. They're basically, I think it was orcs, they'd filled the town with orcs that were taking everything over, and they had to show the skills that they had learnt from Gandalf and from everybody else here in one final battle. Which brings us to our final section, known as the Elixir. Now, this was dubbed this because generally in epics, the hero returns with some kind of potion. So for example, in Indiana Jones, the third movie, his dad is ill. Indy returns with the Holy Grail, gives him, I think it was holy water, like literally a potion, and that saves his father. So he literally returned from the cave where he found it. Sorry, I forget the name. And he pours the holy water into his father's mouth, and his dad lives. He returns with the elixir. Really what this represents though is returning with new knowledge. Because through my own hero's journey of learning how to succeed at YouTube, I have returned with the elixir that Kai and I have named Frame 117, the knowledge that we are aiming to impart to you to help you share in that success. But whether you decide to walk your path with us as a GPS or alone, just remember one thing. You have been Luke Skywalker and I have been your mentor, which means you now possess everything you need to go out and succeed.